Live streaming.
Hey, good morning, the world from here. Good evening from wherever you come from around the world. And thanks again. It's another Friday. We're very excited to talk about something that has just been exploding as of the recent 2 or 3 months. And there are a couple questions that we've had in the last week that it's kind of interesting. This will, at the end of this, you'll see why these questions, we've answered these questions. But the first question is, are NFTs going to go away? And then, isn't this just a fad? So those are a couple things to just think about as we talk here. But I'm joined here this morning, as always, with my colleagues, with Mr. Tim Vasco, who is the Chief Executive Officer, founder of Blockcerts, and Chief Architect. Good morning to you there, Tim.
Morning, Dan. How you doing this Friday morning? I can't believe it's Friday.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, we got a little carried away on the last call. We were talking NFTs.
Yeah.
It's exciting to see what's happening in this market.
Yeah, the momentum is crazy. The ideas and the things rolling out are just insane. It's fun, but it's definitely challenging to manage the time.
Yeah, it is fun. So, and then we have Mr. Daniele Minci, who is the president of Fusion Funder. And good to see you coming to us again from Italy. So good evening to you, Daniele.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me here. And I will say ciao ragazzi in Italian. So we introduce Italian.
There we go.
Yeah.
I won't try. My daughter speaks fluent French, and every time I try, she's like, "Please don't."
Yeah. I get that with Mandarin.
Yeah.
Don't try.
That's awesome. So thanks for joining us, everyone. If you haven't subscribed, please do so down below. Also, hit the thumbs up. Anytime you do, that helps us. And our audience continues to build and grow. And this is something that we've been doing for over a year, and we'll continue to do it because every week there are new things that are happening in the marketplace, but also this is just an area that is hot. And I can't wait to hear what, Daniela, what you have to say in terms of the NFT side, and Tim as well. So what we're going to be talking about is how NFTs will reshape information, assets, and liquidity. And we're looking into our crystal ball and what we're already seeing. And we'll kind of give you and share a glimpse of the future here. So
yeah,
Tim.
Dan, you're exactly right. And so silence, staking, and shaping. And, you talked about what happened this week in the world, what was happening in the news, so to speak, with our with the world. And this came out that the SEC charged mortgage title insurer First American with a cybersecurity violation. 800 million. Put that in perspective.
Ouch.
Images breached. And in 2019, and they didn't tell anybody. So the fine actually wasn't that they knew this was going on. They knew it had a breach. They didn't take significant enough action at the time. Okay. So there's some interesting little buzzwords I stuck in there. Images, right?
Mm-hmm.
Silence, the whole hush hush, don't ask, don't tell policy of a centralized company. This company controls 25% of the title insurance in the United States. 25% of every insurance policy on title. And so the question really then becomes, what does that mean, and what are we saying about that? Well, this is kind of how we feel it. Exposure is bad enough. Nobody likes it, but not telling me is worse, right?
Yeah, come clean.
Yeah.
So, it happens. There are bad actors out there that want to come in and attack and get money out. But literally, what are we talking about when we do this? So that was in the news this week. And then, as you pointed out, Dan, there were a lot of questions about NFTs. Are they here to stay? Well, we've heard all the things about how cool NFTs are and all that, but we're going to talk about 800 million reasons why a version of NFT is really important. Because had that been an NFT portfolio and had that had cybersecurity wrapped right in with every one of those images, guess what? Digital art is images, right? Yep. Guys, that's what it is. Then all of a sudden, we've got a practical use of an NFT. It's a non-fungible token, this image, this idea of being, my title insurance is only important to me and the insurance company and the mortgage company and the buyer and seller of the property. It's not fungible. It's tied to a piece of property, right? It's one thing. And so, you know, from your title insurance company, PDFs encrypted might be a really interesting way to use this technology. And I think that's my point. Again, always being the fundamentalist of Web 3.0 technologies, what are the practical applications? It's not just always about speculation. Daniele talks about long-term all the time. I talk about fundamentals all the time. Here you go. I mean, come on, guys. Let's upgrade our systems. Let's use technologies that exist. And let's avoid these things in the future. And oh, by the way, guess what?
It's more
shame on you. You should have told me. Guess what? I will know. Now I will know.
But I think, Tim, if we make a step backward towards, and it's a contradiction, but let me make a step backwards towards Web 3.0,
right?
Which is we are living right now in an era of self-education. So, and we live in a context that as long as the risks and the reward are clear, I think anyone have the chance to be self-educated. Okay, so exactly. when it comes down to NFT, to me, NFT is just an extension of what social media is in Web 2.0. Okay, because NFT introduced the concept of the ownership economy, so you can own files into kind of a cyberspace. The mistake that people doing is they try to translate Web 2.0 into the Web 3.0 fashion. That's the mistake.
Very good point. Yeah,
because NFT contains rights that you, me, Dan, are able to attribute as valuable. It's our own opinion, because we have done our own research, our own due diligence, that makes this good valuable. We cannot believe, as in the case of Web 2.0, there is a party, whatever platform, that is granting or is guaranteeing something at the price of privacy and all the rest, which is the Facebook model. So we are entering in an era where we self-custody our own assets. So then we have to bear our own risks. NFT right now are promoted like, okay, you have an extension of digital rights, intellectual property. Well, that is not entirely true if you think in Web 2.0 terms. But if you think in Web 3.0 terms, it's entirely right, provided there is a big but that you do your own research. You do your own due diligence, and then you take the risk. If this is true and you fully understand, it's a wonderful concept.
And that you have your own, infrastructure, right? Because,
absolutely.
Because the thing that gives centralized organizations power over this is they've got this massive infrastructure to hold 800 million records. Guess what? Those won't fit on your laptop. And if they did and you lost your laptop, that wouldn't be a good thing, right?
You're gone. Yeah,
you're done.
Maybe on yours, Tim, because you've got some massive
on my laptop they would fit, but on most people's laptop it wouldn't fit. And my laptop's not an Apple. Did I mention that?
Well, and mine is unfortunately is not
we know that.
Not technology advice. I don't want to say it's financial advice.
Like disclaiming technology advice. This is the point, that we've got this idea of IPFS, or interplanetary file system, which is an encrypted file mechanism. Again, back to that fundamental of your private public key pair, right? Your idea of getting this cloud power in your hands, and then, as Daniele says, being smart enough to A, self-educate, B, control that cloud power to the people, control that in your hands, in your way, so that you can hit what we're actually talking about, which is this idea of digital rights management. What are my digital rights? How do I manage them? Today, we see images that have DRM in lots of places, Getty Images, iStock Photo, Shutterstock. We see it with Adobe PDFs and various embedded PDFs. You can edit this PDF, you cannot. Then you see digital rights in areas like this idea of storing 800 million records. I want to go back to that number because it's just so mind-blowing to me. And I think the fine was not really all that big. I can't remember what it was, but in comparison, we freaked out a few years ago when Equifax lost our records. Remember that security breach?
Yeah.
Okay. It was 143 million records. Yeah. This is 800 million records. That's a billion people. That's, you know, almost what's India now? Like it's almost the country. It's almost 3 times the United States.
Yeah.
Think about that. Just the scope is astounding to me.
Oh, wait, 10% of the world population.
10% of the world population. I mean, go into this. So when we start thinking about custody, do any centralized authority really have that ability to take on that kind of responsibility? To your point, Daniele, right? I mean, Web 2.0 got us here, and we wouldn't have wanted to skip that step. Absolutely not. There's a lot of legacy systems and a lot of good, incredible things that I constantly remind my kids, you know, we did a lot of good things too. We did a lot of things right. We didn't do everything wrong. Like that phone in your hand, that was built by a boomer. Right?
This web conference here.
Yeah. So the boomers didn't screw up everything, but you know, there is this next step forward where we have to start reshaping the way we think, as you say, Daniele, and that is one of our lead enterprise channel partners said, I am just yesterday said in a text to me, said, I'm really looking forward to reshaping my thinking, Tim. That's shout out to Mark. And, you know, good on you, Mark, because having come from a major corporation whose name shall not be discussed to jumping into this new world with us at BlockCerts, it's really encouraging to me to see people like that are going, yeah, rethink it. And these are guys that were in the biggest of the biggest enterprises, right?
Yeah. But I think right now it is emerging this new model of, whatever crowd, whatever to say, it's power to the people. Because at the end of the day, NFT, it's a tool that empower people to make a kind of digital investment into whatever is being fungible or non-fungible via a token issuance.
That's right.
So, and that's we are the dawn of a new paradigm where people keep custody of their own assets. So right now, NFT are very popular in case of art, and then we have new models also for non-traditional art or digital art is concerned. But I think what people really need to understand that NFT enable people to keep custody of their assets and take care of them. And when we say an asset, is not strictly speaking a Bitcoin or whatever crypto something, but NFT can be really, really anything.
And when we think about it, and we think about like the insurance industry, for example, what does insurance mean? What are we typically insuring? Assets. Right?
Assets, whatever.
That's what we insure. So when we think about it, and we think about the way we can add value in an industry, now all of a sudden, well, Dan, I see that your house got broken into. Did you actually own that asset? Yeah, there it is, right there.
Right.
How do I know that's not a Photoshop document? Because it's an NFT. It was time-stamped. It was date-stamped. It was hashed to the chain. It was put up there when I bought it.
Exactly.
What's that do for your insurance fraud? Right there. Right there. Just think about it. Like, yeah, that I'm writing a policy. Send me all your records of your transactions, then boom, there you go. Oh, house got broken into, these got stolen. Now we go out and we want to find that asset. We're about ready to do this with a car. For the first time ever, we're going to do this with a car, right? And you want to go find that asset, and you find it in a pawn shop. Is that really the asset? Yep, it is. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
for the first time you can...
That's not possible in Web 2.0 technologies. I want to go back to your point, Daniele. That is not feasible. It is not possible. In Web 3.0, it is. With IPFS, with personal digital rights management, and with this technology we're calling non-fungible tokens, that's what it means. And people didn't understand what Bitcoin meant in 2008 when Satoshi wrote his white paper. They didn't understand it. It took, what are we in, 2021? How many years
12,
is that?
12 years, so approximately.
12, 13, going on 13 years, a dozen years before people understood it, right?
Well, and we understand things based on our knowledge at that point in time. So we understand NFTs to be like the Beeple's option. Right. We understand it to be some of these wild and outrageous things, but it's the underlying technology that you're talking about, Tim, that's the precursor in allowing us to do different things in business and in our home lives.
That's right. And so I think when we're looking at it, we look at these companies and we say, well, who's the next innovative company out there that's actually going to take this leap? Is it going to happen overnight? No, it didn't with Bitcoin either, but it happened, right? And it does happen over time. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. Amazon didn't happen overnight, right? The Tesla car didn't happen overnight. It happened over time. And now we have these big new paradigm shifts, these big new levels of understanding that form our world. And getting into that, let's start looking at the next thing. So that's about silence. And now let's look at staking. And what is staking really? Because we get these obscure terms that are, as Daniele always likes to say, the geeky world of crypto throw out there. And we want to demystify that. Like, that's what we're here to do. Demystify it. Like, what does it really mean? Okay. And staking is really interesting. This article was in The Economist just this week. I love The Economist. They do really interesting things. That's an interesting title. I just noticed on the bottom of this image they have Satoshi. I wonder if it's the same guy. Anyway, why the market for secondhand private equity stakes is thriving. So on the area, I think it was around $85 billion worth of equity in private companies changed hands, right? And Daniele, this is like right up your alley about what Web 3.0 looks like for private equity, capital markets, secondary markets. And that the idea of this image is secondary markets, the idea of trading in a secondary market against assets was first established way back in the spice trades and in the international trades from the Clipper ships. Well, today, secondary markets are really prompted by, this is what Daniele talks about all the time, asset holders who really need the cash, liquidity. Like, how do I get cash to run my business? And what's my reward, if you will, for funding that business? And more importantly, if I provide that reward, how do I get out? That's where the big gap in the market is for private companies. There's no way to make that promise that's been established of, I'm going to build this company, and so few ever actually get to a public market, right? So now we've got this, but even in our current model, we've got $85 billion worth of these big private company stakes changing hands. What's that going to do, Daniele, to the next version of your crowd market, your community? What's that going to do in the world as we see stakes come into play?
Yeah, there's a huge development. I can say something that, let's say, markets already understand, and I can also anticipate something which is very fresh, which is which has happened a few months ago, which is an evolution that is happening right now into DeFi landscape, and I think we never talked about, which is the bonding curve. But just to make a step backward on what you just introduced, staking. It's an obvious development into, let me say in brackets, crowdfunding like market or token offering or whatever you want to call it. So there is a company, and this company is willing to grow and is trying to find kind of alternative fund mechanism to grow their equity, to grow their structure. They can do the traditional fashion and they can do the alternative fashion. The traditional fashion is going to, the existing markets like crowdfunding, which are, very known to be highly illiquid. So this means whatever equity they're going to sell as part of crowdfunding offering, the moment someone is buying that equity and want to sell the next day, they simply cannot because the market is not liquid, as just you mentioned. The evolution of this market is just to remove friction of this illiquid market and then get exposure to liquid markets. So crypto token markets are very liquid because we are talking about 1.6 trillion worth US dollars as the overall market cap of the whole crypto assets. So the moment you get an exposure, let's say on Ethereum protocol, then you get an exposure to $400 billion worth of assets. Okay, so this means the moment you try to envision your own growth path using the staking functionality, and staking for me is just the geek term of skin in the game, because staking is essentially you stake an asset, so you lock an asset in a smart contract for a period of time, so you risk capital because you're deploying capital and you lock capital in a smart contract, and then you redeem your kind of the outcome of this staking contract that typically is a reward which is being provided in token. And this mechanism allow a broad participation of a community to step into this staking contract that will help to deploy capital. Obviously, you have to risk capital, being let's say a token holder that you want to deploy into a staking contract, but you participate to the growth trajectory of a company without touching any equity. And at the same time, you're getting exposure to very liquid market being an entrepreneur. So this is a triple win formula.
So again, a Web 3.0 kind of approach without getting outside of this idea that there's a buyer and a seller, that there's equity and a security. You're actually using this community utility to actually take advantage of the economic utility, this economic function of creating the transfer of the liquidity.
It's an asset.
Of the liquidity against the asset or the non-liquidity of an asset. So that could be land, that could be a private company, it could be a piece of equipment. Leasing companies have done this for years.
This is completely decentralized model, because if you think about in centralized fashion, so you always have a buyer and a seller and a market maker in between. So if you think about how traditional equity market works, while in the case of decentralized protocol, so essentially you might deploy capital into a staking contract, and you have no middleman in between that govern or supervise this contract, because this is a code. You can audit, you can check. As long as you trust the smart contract, essentially you get exposure to the liquidity, and you can withdraw at any point in time your tokens, depending on what are the smart contract conditions. And there's no one saying, yes, you authorized, or no, sorry, I don't like you to withdraw this. Right. That's the beauty of this model. So there's no one in between.
So it reminds me of, and this is kind of a way to explain it, give an analogy. It's like leasing a car, right?
Yeah.
So when you lease a car, you get the utility of the car during that time, and you're paying something for it, right? And if during that lease you decide, I don't want to keep this car anymore, I want to go get a different car, I don't even need a car, and you turn it in based on the condition of the car, how many miles you put on it, and anything written in your contract, your lease contract, you get to turn that car back in and you walk away, right? That's liquidity. That's liquidity in a vehicle. That is exactly what it is. Then what we saw in vehicles is we saw this idea of car shares come up, right? So now you can even lower your stake or your risk even more by, I need transportation, but it sits in my garage most of the time. So therefore, I'm not even going to have a car. I live in a city. I'm just going to go pick one up on the side of the road. So that was the car share model. And now I've got a much lower stake. I may be paying something to be a member of the community, but now as a member of the community, I get the advantage of the utility of this car. But I've got a stake in the community, right?
Absolutely.
So translating these business models to the cloud, right? That's the tokenomics model. That's what we're doing at Blocksearch. We're translating this to the cloud. Now, the centralized authority in those two business models, one is a leasing company, because they're the ones providing liquidity. They're the ones actually taking that in and saying, this is your burn or your reward for having that vehicle. Or the centralized company that's managing all those little cars you see parked around that you can, if you're a member of the community, you pick it up. A decentralized model means the community itself is self-governed. The community itself is working through this smart contract. That's what we're saying here. And that's staking. If I have a fleet of cars that I lease or trucks and I'm running a business, I've got a bigger stake in the community. But I could still be using that leasing model, right?
Absolutely.
And this is the idea of staking. The idea of staking is when you become a community member, when you become a member, an organization that's approved by this leasing company to buy vehicles or fleets, that's how you do it. That's just your membership in that community. You were authentic, approved for credit risk and various things like that by the leasing company, the centralized authority. A liquidity pool, a staking pool does the same thing without a centralized authority. It does it with a smart contract.
Yeah, there's no, to this level, there's no, let's say, to use a banking terms, there's no KYC requirement, because at the end of the day, if you participate with your capital, with your token to a staking contract, essentially you authenticate yourself using your own wallet. And as long as you understand the risks, and the risks are very clear, you can lose your capital. Okay.
Right.
So as long as people understand this and they are ready to take this risk, there's no, let's say, regulatory disclaimer to add on top of it. As long as you fully understand the risk you're taking, and then you deploy capital because you are highly incentivized, and eventually you can lose, let's say you want to deploy $1,000, you are ready to lose $100 or $1,000. That's fine. So to me, when we talk about regulation into digital asset, whatever, it's kind of weird because there is a regulation, there is a catch-up to be done for sure. But in my view, regulation in digital asset is very well advanced, provided that people understand the risk. Because if you understand the risks and you run your own risk-reward strategy, you know how much you can lose and you know how much you can win. And I'm fine with that. So I think our goal is to educate people about the risks, about what we're doing to make sure that we don't leave the next day, and there is a risk of liquidity removal. So we have to provide assurance to the community on how things work. But as long as risks are clear, I think it's pretty cool for people to join this, because there's a lot of upsides in participating to this ownership economy.
And Daniele, also by removing the middleman, it becomes more efficient, and there are more opportunities for.
Yeah, it's direct. So you have not, sometimes, even if you, let's say, if you trade with a centralized exchange, whatever centralized exchange is, you never know what is going to happen, because you always are in front a subjective decision. I want to transfer funds from my wallet into that centralized exchange to my, ledger X. So I want to withdraw some liquidity from a centralized exchange to outside. You might receive an answer by the exchange saying, hey, your account has been frozen for whatever reason, and you're completely stuck.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen this so many times, people, sending very weird questions on Reddit saying, what the hell is going on? And my funds are there. So when you work in a decentralized finance approach and you don't have middlemen, you don't trade with a centralized exchange, but you work only with DeFi protocol. So you remove this friction. So, and then obviously you need to deal with the technology complexity with some clunky interface that obviously we're fixing at Blockcerts. But as long as you understand that you take the risk and you need to be self-educated because before you click something, I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty powerful model.
Isn't what you're just talking about what we saw at Robinhood with GameStop?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. There was a big example of what you just talked about. Like,
exactly.
Oh, exactly. Sorry, we just decided now, no more. We're over.
Yeah, it's done. It's done. We're done. It's done. We're done. We're done.
Yeah. We're done. We're done. So you're done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Put the shackles on, right?
So it is an interesting going back to rethinking the way things happen, and like reshaping is really what we're talking about. We're talking about reshaping. We're talking about control. We're talking about power. We're talking about this idea of the public passport. What is the public passport? This was the future of face-to-face, how COVID-19 will reshape learning and work, another article that came out of Reuters. And it was like, well, what really are we talking about? What really has been reshaped? What are we really looking at here? And we talked last week about this idea of security, about that idea of the vault. Like, you control the vault, you control these private keys, you always have an eye open, you're always kind of safe and monitoring, and you're pretty much worry free because you can click into this thing. And when you're thinking about how the world from here is going to go, when we reshape these ideas of control and power and public passports and the things that really became apparent to us during COVID, we start thinking about, well, who gets to know us and how do we know who they are? And that's what we've built into the Be Certain wallet, the Be Certain vault, the technology, and this version we're releasing next week that allows you to decide what you know about you and who else does, instead of somebody else deciding that.
Yeah, I think it's Tim. I think it's important here to clarify this aspect because it depends on the audience we're talking to. There are two types of audience: people that are running a kind of a B2B model, where they have to comply with KYC requirement because they operate in kind of banking or financial in a regulator framework. So for them, it's not an option to decide whether to comply or not KYC. If they want to stay in business, they have to. So that's why, as part of the service that Blockcerts provides, there is an embedded KYC engine to facilitate these B2B2C business models.
Right.
There are other models where KYC is not being required because we work in fully decentralized manner. So in that case, if there's no, let's say, compliance rule to follow, the KYC requirement is being removed, and people can really, directly transact with a smart contract without any need of KYC requirement.
Right. And so, when you look at that and you look at these different models and these different mind changes, I love the thought about, let's look back at 1993 when CEO Jack Welch wrote of control your destiny or someone else will. That was pretty prophetic in 1993. But obviously, he was thinking as a CEO of a major centralized company called General Electric, GE, right? That was 1993. Let's fast forward to 2021, decentralized. And 2021, you're in control. That's the shift. Control is a given where the power lies in every relationship and transaction. That's who has it. Is not the question, or is it, who has it is what is important about who's in control?
I think never before in the history of mankind, I'm talking about technology, never before we have seen the concept of freedom into technology.
Right.
So the fact that you can essentially do whatever you want, because you have the tools to do it. You're not subject to someone else's decision to do anything you want, from money downwards.
Right.
And this is a pretty powerful concept. I know that there is a lot of, there's a lot of understanding. There's a lot of research every of us need to do. So it took me at least 100 hours to have a grasp of Bitcoin first. And I think similarly here, people need to start
you did
education.
It faster than me.
Yeah. Yeah, just to get a grasp of it, and then people usually buy Bitcoin because they see a tweet of a very influential guy that just bought an asset, which I strongly not advise in doing so. But I think what we're introducing here is the concept of freedom, and technology is a very, very powerful weapon towards this journey, towards these big milestones in our life.
And so technology and the technology of money and what's happening, Daniela, you brought this up earlier this week about the changes in money, like the massive change in what money and values actually mean out there. And I love this, came out, cashless society draws closer with only 1 in 6 payments now in cash. This is from the UK finance study in 2020. And this was the quote, "My wallet never leaves my bedside. Why cashless will soon be king." Right? So there's one on a, my wallet never leaves my bedside. Exactly. That's what we're talking about here, right? Exactly.
It's just a different kind of wallet.
Yeah, but there is if you see this from a macro perspective, and if we get, I just shared, as you mentioned, on our Telegram group, the money supply increase in Canada, which is unbelievable, because Canada had a pretty steady pace of M0 money supply. So the amount of money being, let's say, printed in brackets, there's no money printing per se, but it's just a concept of how much money is being introduced via credit into the money supply. But I heard, I think I read somewhere, 2021, just the US has created 40% of the dollars only this year that have ever been created since the history of the US dollars.
It's
only
insane.
Only this year.
And so this gets us into kind of economic theory, or the quantity theory of money, QTM, which is where money's the center of this macroeconomics. That's what it's always been. So Web 2.0, let's think of economics 2.0. That was the center of thought of money. And I brought out the book Values by the former governor of the Bank of London and the Bank of Canada. And really this idea of consuming, creating capital and consuming social versus creating value and using social as new capital. This is a new disconnected model. The original equation, MV equals PQ, where money's the value supply, is money supply, V is velocity of money, P and Q are the price and quantity components of GDP, have become completely disconnected from the economic realities we're living in today, completely. So this is a huge reshaping all the way through. What we just talked about is reshaping information, digital rights. We just talked about reshaping staking and transactions and liquidity and access to capital. And we talked about reshaping identities that tie into the social control of all this stuff that's been centralized. And now underlying that, underpinning that, is this massive push, like from the bottom up or top down, I don't even know which way it goes, massive growth in money supply. It's a change in money. And adding to that, what isn't in this graph anywhere is the fact that new money called crypto has also emerged into the marketplace, which is a new form of value creation and exchange.
Yeah, but there is a very nice concept which is emerging right now, which is, there's a lot of people discussing about what is really hedging inflation. Okay, what is really hedging price increase, whatever, due to this increase of money supply, of money debasement. At the end of it is the same, not in economic terms, but mechanically is quite the same. So what NFT, crypto, whatever we want to name it, introduce for the first time ever is that it gives anybody the possibility to buy assets, okay? Because if we consider a token, so from Bitcoin downwards, our own token is an asset, it's property rights. So if we consider an asset as a valuable argument, thinking about in values term, as a valuable argument to say, if you own an asset, you're hedging inflation, I think we're entering into a brand new economy. And we're empowering people by owning just an asset. Then obviously not all the assets have the same performance, but just entering into ownership economy, so ownership meaning owning an asset, then it's a practical way to hedge whatever is going to happen, because no one knows what is going to happen about inflation. No one knows it. So this means, I think from a practical standpoint, the little thing I can do is just decide which asset to own to hedge the inflation that likely is going to rise.
Right. And so, there's all these things kind of going on all at once. And if today's world from here tells you something, it's this: the world's changed. It has changed permanently. It is growing in a whole unique digital way that's shifting everything that we thought before into a new level of thinking. And, it's going to be complex. And when we started building this out, we started thinking about, well, how are we going to bring all these things together and make it a lot easier? Because as you always say, Daniele, this is tough. And believe it is tough. I'm
very complex.
Like, we are working 15, 18 hours a day just to get our heads around it and build it out. It is not easy, but it's our mission to make this accessible and easier as we get this utility going. And that's why we're so excited as we keep introducing and getting closer to our big version release of all of this that's live. So all those transactions and things, we're not just pretending like this is going to be there. This is there. This is happening. We've got our transactions down here. We've got our vault and our IDs, and we can do all this on the fly. We can do all of our talking, chatting, bringing it in, tracking, storing our elements within this model, because you're going to have to. Because guess what? Just like it said here, my wallet never leaves my bedside. Why cashless will soon be king. Not only cashless, power, cloud power, and cloud power to the people. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about getting this power into the hands of people so it can actually be used. It can actually be used live, and the transactions are there. And as you're living your life, you're in control. Everything from that first chat all the way to where you go into any instance that you're going into to use, to your identity and all your transactions. That's what we talk about when we say cloud power to the people. And that's really what we mean when we're trying to demystify this market, is to give that power back and say, this is how power is shifting, be part of it, right? Isn't that really what we're talking about here?
Absolutely. And we provide the last mile to people to get their hands on, because perfect right now, because it's like, you want to have a mobile phone at home, you just miss the last mile. And then we are the last mile of this, of the, let's say, digital assets or business applications connecting with digital assets. Yeah, because it's not simple just to explain what is a wallet to a person that is using a physical wallet or cash payments. Yeah. So that's why I think this is a fast forward for people starting to get educated into the space, and then having an entry there and then increasing the level of understanding and the level of education. You need to start from somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the wallet really becomes your gateway to all of the things that we've been talking about here. It's your protection.
You have two choices. Either you spend hours per day just watching and reading books but doing nothing, or you put your hands on and then you start learning, and then eventually you read the books later. But at least you're in the space first.
And you do what we do. You get involved, and you put your efforts and energies and talents and money where your mouth is, and you get involved and you become part of it, right? And that's what we're asking people to do is become part of this big movement, because this is the movement of the future. And I can't tell you how excited I am to actually be able to use this every day. I use it every day. And we've got a lot of people that use it every day, and we're expanding that community. Next week, we'll expand it more. This next version of the wallet's going out next week to all of our channel partners and then our token holders. And so we're just, building this expansion every day. And that's what's exciting to me. And I'll ask everybody too to become part of it, even to a little bit. Thank you for being here, and subscribe and give us the thumbs up, because that also gets you involved as this whole cloud power shifts and digital transformation takes place in the world.
Cloud power to the people. Love it.
That's it. That's it. So that was our message today. What we're talking about, NFTs. It's new tech. It's cool. It's powerful.
It is cool.
It's going to impact so much. So for all those people asking me, are they here to stay? Here's my answer. Yes. In a big way. It's just the application. It's not a myth. It's going to make a big difference in the way we do things. Staking. Are we going to see secondary markets and new ways of bringing capital in to create new jobs, new businesses, new opportunities for the biggest job creators and personal love of my life, which is entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial cloud? Yep, that's happening right now before your very eyes. That's there. And are we reshaping everything from digital control of our assets and our livelihoods and our identities to money? Yep, that's happening too. So three big ones.
I think it's even bigger. Storm. I think it's even bigger. What we're doing, what we're explaining here is just, when people are asking, do you think that something is happening in the future? I think most of the things we just discussed right now are inevitable, in the sense that they will grow and grow. How they will grow? Well, there will be, some intersections of what we just discussed. Think moving up and down. But I think the future is digital, as we explained. The future is tokenized in the sense of Web 3.0 fashion, as we just described. And the future will be to put people more and more in control of their assets. How this is going to be is just a user experience, a user interface, and that's what has to be dramatically improved. Because right now, digital asset, crypto, whatever, has a very clunky entry point. So people get confused when they do the first step. So that's one of the first issues.
The BlockSearch team and community of developers all over the world, 15 countries now, 5 continents. Big shout out to you guys for bringing de-geekifying and bringing real usability to Web 3.0, to the entrepreneurial cloud and the digital transformation and cloud power to people, because that's what you spend all your time doing. And you guys are amazing, like amazing developers who actually understand and seek to understand what users need to be able to do out there. So thank you for making us really who we are and keeping that going. That's what's important. Like, that's inclusion too. Getting rid of all this complexity. That is inclusion. It's not
the hardest thing to do.
That's how you get inclusion, right?
Yeah, the hardest thing to do is make something that's difficult, simplistic.
So we've got an amazing team of people out there that just plow at this day and night, literally, across the world.
I wanted to. I was checking on our YouTube channel. I seen a question from I think Tiffany posted the question. I think we can go through it. The question is, where does IP ownership fit into the new world of NFT? If you want, I can take it.
You take
Yeah,
it.
and then we've got to wrap up because
very simply. NFT, it's like we are playing on a different planet. Okay, we need to think in a cyberspace. We don't have to think in US terms. We don't have to think in Italian terms, on UK terms. IP is designed to work in the UK, in Italy, in the US. That's how IP works. Every state, every country has his own law and define what IP is within their boundaries. While in NFT, we are all on the same planet. Okay, we are on a cyberspace. So there's no IP concept per se. Okay, at the end of the day, there is a notion of intellectual property. So if I'm an artist and I can prove I have I have my artwork, and someone is posting on an NFT marketplace, I can go to the website and say, hey, that's mine, and I can prove it is mine. So in that case, the marketplace, whatever the marketplace is subject to remove it. Otherwise, they might be censored. Okay, but in general terms, there's no IP itself that works in NFT, because the rights of the NFT is the code, is the digital pieces that are contained in the wrapper, that is the token. So people need to understand that the ownership is the fact that your wallet address has this token ID that is linked to that file that gives you ownership right. Then you can do whatever you want with that piece of file. But you don't have to think in IP terms as you do in the traditional fashion, because NFT is a new technology. There's no legal framework development that works across the world. So we need to think as rights on a cyberspace.
And it's immutable. Let's go back to that.
And it's immutable. You can prove it.
Nobody can mess with it.
I can prove it. it. I'm buying NFTs. I'm buying artworks. I love digital artworks. So what I'm doing is I'm going to a marketplace. I bid, then I buy something, then I keep custody on my MetaMask or whatever other wallet, and then I owns it. So the moment I want to sell it back, then I can prove I am the owner. So my wallet owns that token. That's what people mess up with IP or with ownership. That ownership is the ledger, Etherscan or Binance Smart Chain Scan, whatever, that prove that my wallet owns that token, and I have all the transaction hash to prove it. It's kind of a techie stuff to do it. We will simplify, but right now it works very, very well from a tech standpoint. Well, people need to understand that it's not just copy paste of the traditional word in a very simple terms. People need to be educated before understanding, but it's a beautiful concept.
It is. And so, yes, we've got some crazy big stuff happening here. We're really excited to continue to roll out new things every week. Next week, we'll be releasing this version of the wallet to a limited invite-only community. And as we grow, I believe in the next couple of weeks, we're going to take a break over the holidays. There's Canada Day, there's the 4th of July, Independence Day in the United States. And we'll be back with some of the huge cloud power we always talk about behind the scenes. So you're going to see, we've been talking about wallets, but you have no idea what is cool behind the depths that's making all this happen at Blocksearch. It's very, very cool stuff. And we'll be making those relationships next. In the meantime, I want to say happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. I'm father of 5, so hopefully I'll get a card or a call. And
you might have to remind them today.
Sure. And and in the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, and it's digital time, so you better get digital.
Great. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And don't forget to click on the thumbs up button and certainly subscribe if you haven't already. So
and grazie, Daniele.
Grazie a tutti. Prossima volta facciamo in italiano. Ciao.
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
Yeah. Thanks.